Hey, the world's full of fantastic music. Each month, we explore an album of significance, its roots, how it makes us feel, and then banter about its influence and staying power. Join us on our journey as we dissect, discuss, and discover some of the world's greatest albums on The Sonic Collective.
Hello to all the collectivists tuning in. This is Scott G, the Sonic Collective, joined as always by my fellow album aficionados, Darren, Scott C, and Alan. And we are going to talk about our pick for July 2021, Bjork's Homogenic. Bjork is one of those artists that exists not only as a musician, but also a cultural personality completely separate from their art. I chose Bjork because I found most of what I did know about her was in that pop culture realm and that personality side of things. And I really wanted to listen to what's considered one of her best albums. So as always, I'm going to reserve my own listening experience until the end and will instead throw over to Alan to find out his thoughts.
Beep. Thanks for throwing it over to me, Scott. Bjork, Homogenic. Or Homogenic. I was not sure how to pronounce that. I have never really spent a lot of time exploring Bjork's discography. I knew who she was because, like you said, she's sort of a cultural icon, known for her sort of avant-garde style. Famously, she wore a dress that looked like a swan to some award show. At least I'm pretty sure that was Bjork.
Oscars.
Anyway, Icelandic icon that kind of has transcended onto this global, dare I say, A-list celebrity status, and not necessarily always off the back of just the music. There's always a lot going on, but we're talking about her music here. And, I listened to this album probably more than any other album we've ever reviewed on the Sonic Collective, because I just wasn't quite sure how I felt about it. Let's talk about it sonically for a moment. This album is super chaotic. And when I say that, I don't mean it's a mess by any means, but there is a lot going on here. There's a lot of texturing and a lot of layering of the audio. Every her vocal tracks are heavily filtered, and reverb is a big fixture, and there's tons and tons of dynamic range. So it all kind of adds up to create this cacophony of sound. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. And, depending on the mood I was in, I didn't like it that much. Pro tip, don't listen to this album if you're stressed out, because it's just going to piss you off. Because the last thing anybody needs is an Icelandic woman yelling at them. Her vocals go from really quiet all the way into a crescendo of just yelling, and she holds that note. And this is like a thing she does on every song. She just holds this note for almost uncomfortably long, but because of all the filtering and the layering of other vocal tracks that kind of go along with it, it works. Somehow it works. That seems to be a recipe that they used. I don't know if that's present on subsequent albums or whatever, but on Homogenic, that was a very prevalent thing they did. It's really striking though. And I think they've done it well. There are some standout tracks here. My favorite was Alarm Call. I think that one was pretty fun. But Hunter and Yoga or Joga and Unravel, those four tracks stood out to me. I actually don't even know which ones were singles here, but it doesn't matter. Just such a weird and interesting album, and I don't know how to even categorize it. So I really enjoyed the pick. it was super super unique and unlike anything I've really dived into before. I've been rambling though. Scott Coates, I'll throw it over to you.
Thanks, Alan. You hit on the perfect word, chaotic. It is absolutely the perfect word because I could find no flow, rhyme, or reason to the album at all when I listened to it. And I'd never listened to an entire Bjork album. I was fully aware that she's a very intricate character and probably more could be defined as an artist than a musician. When I was a DJ in clubs, I used to play a remix of Big Time Sensuality, which I really used to like. And I felt like this could have been the soundtrack to a strange art film or the background music at a really bizarre art exhibition. And as I listened to it, I just still can't figure out when you would listen to this. Like there's no groove. And again, it doesn't flow track to track. So I'm like, I've listened to it twice in full and little bits of songs here and there because I would put it on and I would just find myself irritated. It was like a cat being swung by its tail or bagpipes being disemboweled or something. And I read things online, or when I posted this as our pick for the month, I had all kinds of friends say, oh, it's a masterpiece and this and that. And I feel like it's like being at an art show where you're looking at a wall with paint just seemingly thrown all over it. And, some people are musing at how incredibly deep and whatnot it is. And most people like myself just don't really get it or get any enjoyment out of it. And that's kind of how I felt about it. Like Alarm Call had slight undertones of Big Time Sensuality, I thought. Immature is the track that most approached what I'd call a song in my book. I mean, Pluto made me want to slip my wrist, give up, and throw the speakers out the window. Really, I was just like, what is happening now? Most of it just felt like an electronic keyboard, like an old Casio or Radio Shack keyboard, randomly spewing out sounds or patterns. I just don't get it. Like All is Full of Love. Okay, that was almost a pleasant ender, but I just don't get it. There was no part of it I don't know if you'd sit on Sunday morning having coffee and listen to this. I don't know if you would drink whiskey with headbangers and listen to it or cook dinner to it. I don't get it. There was no flow. I could never get into it. And it just grated on me a great, great deal. And then I'm like, is this just like Radiohead or Linkin Park that I don't get, but other people seemingly love? It might be in that boat, but I just keep thinking of those art shows where if you ask me, the art is a piece of shit, but there'll always be those supposedly deep people that'll pretend it's fantastic and just muse on about it. I think it's a turd. Darren.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you on this one, Scott. I had trouble. Well, actually, maybe I'll start at the end. One of my last points I wrote down here was perhaps this is too emotional and deep for me because I also did not get it. That being said, I appreciate the boldness, uniqueness, the atmospheric kind of tracks that they created. And, I get it's an art. I get some people will love this and can just get right into it. I almost like, and I think I mentioned to it, we texted back and forth once and I'm like, this is like if you live in Bladerunner land and you just want to, walk around Bladerunner land all the time and it's just raining and dark and sad and you're a futurist emo or something, you might love it. But I think it just lost on me. And I love to explore new music and I appreciate the artistry of what it is. I think her voice is an instrument in itself and very unique. There's no denying you can tell who it is, and that's a sign of a great artist. It just didn't talk to me at all. I even just pulled it right out of the Wikipedia. It actually describes it. Homogenic is an electronica, trip hop, art pop, glitch, and experimental album. And I'm like, that's the perfect line because it's just like, yeah, what the F is this thing? It's so all over the place.
Chaotic.
I agree that it's chaotic. It's absolute chaos. She was mentioned, it came up a few times that kind of influence from classical music, and she was in jazz, kind of jazz fusion, alternative type of bands. And so I think she has, a good musical, classical music ear. And I read an article where she referenced that, even Bach and Beethoven didn't actually finish some of their greatest songs at times. And so each time they played, it would be a little bit different because they would just insert certain things. But yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, this album, we talk about this sometimes. The lengthwise was good. It was only 43 minutes, just over 43 minutes. Came out in 1997. Interesting thing about this is in 1996, she was actually being stalked by this Ricardo Lopez, and known as the Bjork stalker. And yeah, he ended up mailing her a bomb full of sulfuric acid. And he would film himself and how obsessed he was, mailed the bomb, did one final tape of himself telling her how he destroyed her life and all these things, and filmed himself and blew his head off. Insane. So she was dealing with that. And there's I forget, there's one song, I think Too Bad or something, that is basically about that and how she dealt with it. So that's kind of crazy. You don't want any psychos after you, but maybe that's why this is so chaotic. She was dealing with that. Yeah, again, same point as you, Scott. I don't know where you play this. I don't know what situation you're in that this is like, you nailed it. That's the perfect album for this moment. Congratulations. I just don't see it. One more fact, and then I'll throw it over to Scott, is we're saying her name wrong. It's not Bjork. Everybody pronounces it Bjork, but it's actually Bjork. It's pronounced Bjork, but it just sounds too weird, so everybody just sticks with Bjork. But in Icelandic, we're blowing it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, even weed, I usually say it would help, and I tried, and it just didn't. I tried Up, which is the Tragically Hip's brand, Northern Berries, which goes very good with music in general, one of my favorites with music. Could not help this album. I just couldn't. So anyway, Scott, what did you think? I mean, this was your pick, and so how did you do?
Yeah, I love going last on these because then I get to hear what you guys think and just where it checks off the same boxes, right? And I think, like you, I'm going to lead with actually what was going to be my last point, because this did the final track also reminded, like All Is Full of Love, reminded me of soundtrack as well too, which is what Scott said, and in particular Bladerunner 2049. With that atmospheric sound to it, and just how oppressive that density of sound coming at you was in a lot of those scenes. And I got that same feel off of this. And I think it takes a lot to be able to force people to emote through music, unless you're hitting, if you're doing some super sappy love song, you can get away with it, right? But if you're trying to push some of those buttons that soundtracks have to do, especially without the visual, there's something going on there. And I got that from this, and that stood out for me as well too. Yeah, overall, I'd say coming out of the gate, this is another album that you need to be wearing headphones to really enjoy. It is, a giant cacophony. It's complex. It's rich on the high and low end. And if you're, listening to it through an Echo Dot, you're not really going to get your money's value out of this thing, right? So, but watch out. I remember I had a remix of On Point by House of Pain that was really big on the low end, and I was afraid it was going to blow out my speakers, and it actually did blow out one of the speakers in my 1998 Plymouth Sundance, rest in peace. And so be careful with that on this Bjork album as well. If you have it cranked, it might just wreck a woofer on you. Yeah, I have to admit, the first couple times that I went through this album, I was trying to pay attention to the lyrics, and it's not just the Icelandic accent. I just get mesmerized by her voice as an instrument too. Like Darren mentioned, at some point, I just stopped listening to what she's saying and just listened to the tone of her voice and the pacing of it, and that. It was incredibly interesting for me on that. I think out of all the elements of the album, her voice is what stands out. The musical composition behind it is interesting at times, but I didn't find it to be anything that stands out. Maybe it's just because it is really hard to find a thread through the entire album, through the songs, that I run into that problem. I like the first couple, like Hunter and Yoga, and that were really solid entries into the album. I'm with Alan that I thought Alarm Call was the best song on this album. I thought the layered vocals where she's doing the backing tracks for herself, that was different than anything else on the album. And once again, Loved her voice as an instrument, and having 2 or 3 versions of it on the same song just really accentuated that for me. So it was good, and it was really well positioned in the back half of the album. So by that point, you were starting to get a little burned out by the sound, and that was just a breath of fresh air. So I thought that was a really good idea. But then you run into Pluto, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that was just a hot mess. I still don't know what to make of that thing. Like, that was some next level Yoko Ono kind of stuff going on there, right? Like whatever she was trying to do, I hope she feels like she got there, because I don't know. I just straight up don't know. But yeah, overall, I like the album. I like the length of it. Like you said, it was 10 tracks, just under 44 minutes. I did have a problem finding a thread through the album, but maybe that is the thread, that there is no thread. I don't know. Is that too meta? But there is enough variety in the sampling and the instruments that I found it pretty interesting. Would I add it to the list of best albums of all time? Not for me, but that's a pure taste thing, right? Do I think it was an interesting listen and that I'm better for it? I think so. Yeah. There was some care and attention that was put into breaking things up in it. It was an attempt at building an album, and I'm like, I think it was Scott that said, that maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I'm stuck in Blink 182 and Death Cab for Cutie, and I don't get the Bjorks of the world. Yeah, with that in mind, let's go to the scores, and we'll go back to Alain.
All right. Yeah, would I recommend, even though, all of us have kind of expressed how this isn't necessarily our favorite album, I'm still highly recommending it with a 4 out of 5. And the reason is it's unique, it's weird, it's interesting. And I think people are going to take away from it different things. So while this may have not appealed to us necessarily to the fullest extent, someone else might hear this and be like, God damn, the cinematic instrumentation is the best. Or, like you guys touched on her voice as an instrument, that might appeal. So 4 out of 5, recommend. Influenced my taste. Not only did it not influence my taste, I don't think it influenced the taste of any artist I like. So I'm giving that a 1 out of 5. Now I say that, but I do like 30 Seconds to Mars, and they did actually do a pretty decent cover of Hunter, which is the first track on this album. So if you haven't listened to that, check it out. Overall, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. I think some tracks were great, and they're actually going to make it on other playlists of mine. But some albums were, like Pluto. My notes here said Pluto made me homicidal. And that's coming from a guy who listens to screamy heavy metal a lot. Like, it just was noise to me. 3 out of 5. I think there's some good takeaways on this album, but the whole thing, maybe not so much. So, yeah.
All right. I'll go next. And, I am glad I listened to this album, because she's no doubt an influence. She stayed relevant for decades, and I'd never listened to an entire album. So I'm very happy that we had the experience. That said, I'm kind of with you again, Alan, like influence. I kind of think, like, out of anyone I listen to, who has she influenced? And I'm just going to put it down to a 1, because I'm not motivated to listen to any other Bjork albums. For recommend, I know she's supposed to be great, but I'm just going to give it a 2, because I don't know when I would tell someone to listen to this again. Like, listen to it while on a long drive, or listen to it before you jump off a building. I'm not sure, but so I got to just give it a 2. And overall, it's a rare time. I'm going to give it a 1, because it just really grated on me. Darren.
Yeah, mine aren't too far off. You mentioned something about, she was well known in Iceland before. She was like a child prodigy. She had an album out when she was 11 years old. So she was known of 20 years as a really successful young artist, before anybody even heard of her outside of Iceland. Yeah, and I even tried to read a Pitchfork article on the review of the album, and it was written by this Philip Sherburne, and I couldn't even understand the article. So that's when I knew I was in trouble for this one. I'll post it, and if anybody can read it and decipher this person's writing, there's a lot of adjectives. He should write for like Thailand because they use a lot of weird things. Into the Colorful, it's a very fantastic, and maybe that describes this album. For me, anyway, quickly. I'm literally just going to go all twos. I think, recommend. For me, it's a tough one. I think we have to do a service here and say we go back and listen to albums so you don't have to necessarily. And I think you'd struggle unless you're really into that kind of alternative emo Bladerunner stuff. You're probably going to struggle. So, two, Influence, not so much, but I get what she was doing, and it was different. But I still have to just go a 2. And then again, that overall, I'm just going to go a 2. And sorry, Bjork, but yeah, just not my jam. Scott G. Bjork.
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with you that this is a difficult album, but I'm going to list that as a pro. I think that there's different reasons to listen to music, and one is just to be purely entertained and to have something in the background and to be the salt on top of other things. And sometimes you want to just dig in and be challenged by something. And I found this to be a very challenging album that, trying to understand the art of what she's doing. And that goes back to what Scott was saying, that maybe she's more of an artist than just a musician, and she's doing her jam. And as we said, I didn't completely get it. So with that in mind, Influenced, I'm going to go a 2 as well too. Her singles off of other albums like Human Behavior, Army of Me, Venus as a Boy, those I've heard and I enjoyed, but this album and any of her albums never really drew me in. So, and I honestly can't think of many people that outright list her as an influence as well too. So I'm at least 2 degrees of separation from any of the hardcore Icelandic people that are really pushing her. Would I recommend, though? I'm going to jump up to a 4. If you are looking for a challenging listen, if you do like that atmospheric, futuristic feel to things, a little more electronic in your game, this is definitely worth a listen to. I'm definitely going to dig a little bit deeper into her discography, because it seems like she changes from song to song, let alone album to album. So there's a lot of promise of evolution and diversity in it. So would I recommend for sure. Overall, that's going to average out to about a 3.5. I'd say for me, I think it's definitely worth at least a listen or two to this album, knowing that I think this is another one of those polarizing albums. You're either going to love it, hate it, or just simply not understand it, and your brain is going to break trying to decide which camp you're in. So at that point, try your Tragically Hip Marijuana, see if that gets you through the experience, and then move on to the next album, or go back through the Sonic Collective archives and find one of the many wonderful albums that we do recommend. I think that really wraps it up for this month, which is the tail end, of course, of this most recent cycle. And I think we're getting a little playful into the new round starting. Actually, it's not as starting then, I guess, Darren, is it? We've got, are we going to let the cat out of the bag on the next round, or are we going to just make them tune in?
Oh, no, you can tell them what's next.
I'm going to throw the hot potato to you, because I'm still not completely sure exactly all the rules of what we're doing here.
Yeah, basically for the next round, and there's 4 of us, so the next 4 picks, we have kind of gone back and forth. And this actually started from a couple episodes ago. I can't remember which one of us, but Nickelback just kind of came up in conversation, and how they are often, hated and made fun of. And I think both Al and I jumped in and said, they're actually talented musicians and not a bad band, and they just get the wrath of the world. And started there, but from there we decided, well, why don't we do a round of picking bands? Like Nickelback is going to be one of them, but also other bands that are not necessarily, on a larger scale, are not liked, as much as they have a great following and have a great success, they are not liked. So we maybe will keep the other 3 bands hidden for now, but one of them will be Nickelback. I'm going first. I know mine, so I'll keep that and just tune in to mine. Yeah, so we're going to go from there and then kind of go and just say, really take a good look at it and try to put biases aside and just say, are these actually super talented musicians? So it's not even necessarily a full album. We're going to kind of just look at them as an artist and all their discography and collection and songs and just kind of make a judgment call from there, whether or not they deserve the wrath of Khan and beyond. Yeah, so that should be fun. Yeah.
Bands people Bjork's love to hate.
Yeah, exactly. Bands people love to hate. One last Bjork fact. Her name means birch tree. Oh. The end. That's it.
It would.
Yeah.
All right. So on that bad note,
take us out.
I guess that's it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our July pick. Bjork's Homogenic. I don't know if that's the Icelandic way of saying it, so I at least got one of the 2 right. Tune in next month for Darren's Hush Hush pick, and we will see you on the flip side. Take care.
Thanks for listening and exploring with us. We'll be back real soon with another pick and critique of albums that matter here at the Sonic Collective.